Hello and welcome to anybody out there watching. It has been quite a while since I've streamed. I am streaming over here on YouTube instead of on Twitch because I've been having problems with Twitch on my desktop. I also have everything set up here on YouTube for my virtual release party things that I do through Patreon on the day that the new Dawn of the Black Axe issues are released. We have one more of those next month, and I just didn't want to tweak all the settings in my broadcasting software to go back over to Twitch, especially when Twitch is acting buggy for me. So I just decided to do it here on YouTube and make it free and easy to all. You can please chat in the chat if you're here, just so that I know that everything is working and that nothing's wrong with the broadcast. That's a big help to me. I'm going to quickly move my beverage to this side of me because I'm going to be doing watercolor and I have the water over here. So anybody who can comment in the chat, I'd really appreciate that before I get moving on. I saw a heart pop up. That's very lovely to see. Thank you for your heart. Which is a strange thing to say. April says, coming in loud and clear. That's awesome. Good news. All right, I'm going to move some things around on my desktop just to make my life easier. Is there any way I can get this setting? No, I can't. That's something I wish YouTube was different about. Anyhow, let's switch over to a working screen. Don't know how well this is going to work because of the scale of some of these pieces. I think you guys are going to be at like an extreme angle. I don't know of another way to do that. All right, so I'm going to be doing some watercolor pieces. I'm going to take you through all the pieces that I have laid out and ready for painting. Because there are a bunch of them. So what this started with is every year at Heroes, I do a watercolor painting that goes into the Heroes auction. And I needed to start working on that. Heroes is next month. I need to get that done. I also found a couple of years ago that if I do a second painting, usually in the same theme as the first, one goes in the auction, which is a Saturday night auction. And then the other is available at my table on the Saturday, or on the Sunday, I'm sorry, the Sunday morning, usually for the same price. So I need to do two paintings for Heroes. Those are 16 by 20 paintings. I've done mouse guard pieces in the past. I had a lot of success with doing two Disney Afternoon pieces, Disney Afternoon characters pieces. One was a Gummy Bears piece, and the other was a DuckTales piece. That one got a lot of hype. And so I've decided to do two more Disney Afternoons. And one is a Tailspin piece, which is going to be very hard for me to capture in camera because of how big this is. Do I just have to go up, and then angle this? Just put you guys at an extreme angle? I think that's what's going to happen. And then am I not in focus? There we go. So there we are. Tailspin. This one has tape on the globe symbol to hopefully block out watercolor going too far. I also have a tape border all the way around to hopefully contain bleed and spill. So I've got that piece and then a Rescue Rangers piece ready to go for watercolor. But these are large, and I also feel like I want to work on something else first. So I had some mat board scraps, and I know there is a really great charity that also happens at Heroes, and so I did a piece to go into that. And this is actually on a red mat board scrap. It's probably going to warp a little more than I would like, but we'll just deal with that. And then with some smaller scraps, I decided to do 2 more pieces. These were windows cut out of mats, basically, when you pop the mat out. And then I trimmed it down to a reasonable size. These are each 9 by 12. We've got Bardrick with the black axe, and we've got the Matriarch Siobhan. So these are the pieces that I'm going to work on first because they're small and will kind of get me back into the feeling of doing paintings. I'll probably also rotate around. One of the things about doing watercolors like this is it's a lot easier if you have one piece wet and then you can move it over to dry while you're working on another piece that's maybe already dry, semi-dried or completely dried. So that's where we are, everybody. I'm going to work on this piece first. I wanted to do some interesting lighting. So I did a little color comp of this piece. So that's going to help me kind of figure out that I want this under lighting. But yeah, let's go. I'll get in a little closer on this one because it's smaller. Towery, hello and welcome. Hope you're doing well. Don't know if you missed the beginning of this, but I'm having troubles with Twitch. And I can't... there's a weird, stupid thing that's happened where I can't view things on Twitch. And I can't tell if it's a problem with essentially my browser being old that can't be updated any further because of my OS. Or if this is an issue pertaining more to... something going on with Twitch. I don't know. I've heard some people say, oh, Twitch is having server issues, but what's strange is I can totally look at Twitch stuff on my phone through the app, and even when I open the app, it says, like, your app is out of date. You have to update this, and I just hit cancel, and I can still go through and watch any channel with video. And on my desktop, I get 0 video. So, like I said, I think this might be a browser extension problem that I can't really deal with because of the OS issue. So, and having everything already set up for Dawn of the Black Axe release parties, I just figured I'd do that here. MacBook Pro. Well, I would probably be more... Oh, wow. This mat board is going to be awful. Let's hope the illustration board isn't bad. I bought a different illustration board than I normally ever use. And I didn't really look to see how it's going to take watercolor. This is doing weird splotchy stuff as it's going in. This might not work at all, everyone. Yikes. Well, we learn, right? This is how we learn. Maybe this first coat has to go down to like almost seal it? I don't know. Yeah, I need a desktop. I can't do a laptop to do work. My issue with upgrading isn't even like, oh, it's the I don't want to buy a new computer. Like, obviously, who wants expense right now? But my main, like, hey, I don't want to do that is, as you know, Towery, because I've talked about it on the old Twitch stream many a time, is losing the current version of the version of Photoshop that I've been using. My current. Alright, I'm giving this whole thing this, like, just yellow wash just to give it something that's a start. Gives it a little bit of tone so I'm not working on perfectly white. And as I said, because this is matte board and it was never intended to have this done to it, it's acting just a little squirrely. Let's hope. Let's hope this comes out okay in the end, because like I said, I have two other pieces besides this one that are on this same material. And so if this is a bust, that means all that transferring work was for naught on those. You need a Pro for 3D stuff. You mean Pro, like just the series, or does it need to be... Because you could do that on a desktop, right? You don't have to be... Like, there's no way that they've made a laptop that's more powerful than whatever their current desktop is, right? All right, I'm moving this off to the side so I can start painting, getting just a base coat down. I worry I might have gone a little heavy-handed on that one because I was worried about the splotchiness. So let's see if I can manage to not be as heavy with this one. He says as he goes just as heavy. These were transferred onto these boards using a graphite paper, a transfer paper. It's basically something that has like a powdered graphite with a little bit of probably like a wax binder on it just to keep it on the paper instead of just being dust that you could blow off like that. And you put it in between your final surface and your you put it between your final surface and whatever you're trying to transfer, and you press down as you are tracing over your first image, and it transfers. In the old days, it used to be called carbon paper. Thank you, Jacob. I mean, the good news about this is if this all goes awry because I'm using matte board when I should be using something else, I still have the original pencil drawing. You know, this is a transfer. This is a tracing. And I could retransfer it onto a better paper and essentially start over. Who wants to do that? But if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. David Maxwell, hello and welcome. It's good to see you this last weekend at Motor Cité. Thank you to you and your wife for coming out, especially for attending the panel. I told Julia that you had been there, and she was like, "Wait, what? I recognize that name, David Maxwell. That's a long time regular in our online store. I love to put a name with a face." And I was like, "Well, he was here. He was here with his wife." She's like, "Well, point him out if he comes back by." And it didn't work out that way, where you and she were there at the same time. All right, that one has like a base. We'll start working on this big one too, especially these ones that I'm worried about. It already looks incredible. Thank you very much. Oh, well, thank you. Forestrial, are you applying just a paint coat for tone, or is this a fixative for the underdrawing? Both. So only one of these is a drawing like with pencil. These are the ones that are darker are done with the transfer paper. And actually, like if I start doing that, you barely get it to lift. In fact, if I go over it with an eraser, it barely wants to lift. So there's not much to really fix down. The transfer paper kind of makes that a little bit more permanent. Now on this one, I made the mistake of I put the transfer paper the wrong way. And so when I got done and I pulled it up, there was like nothing there because I had it so that the transfer side, the graphite side is supposed to be facing this. Instead it was facing up with the drawing down on top of it. And then I trace over the drawing. In fact, here's the drawing. Right? So I had transfer paper in between here and here. But because I had it the wrong way, all that pushing down and tracing over this with a pen meant that what it really did was make a perfect transfer on the back of the page. So what I did was I lifted this. I had it hinged at the top with a piece of tape. I lifted it up. I got the transfer paper out. I thought about flipping the transfer paper and doing it again. And then I just went, maybe. And I put it back down. And I just used the side, like the cap of a pen that I have. That's kind of like it's plastic, but it's smooth and slightly rounded. And I just burnished on the top of this. I just went over it like this, over all the lines. And it did a good enough job that then I could draw on this with pencil. So this one's actually like pencil on paper. Which means that sealing it is a good idea. Putting the yellow down is more of... I'm doing it more for tone and to give it like a surface to start working on. Watercolor is kind of a dry and chalky finish. And so putting this down means that the next bit of watercolor after this dries that goes down has something to bite onto. It's a little bit of tooth. Hopefully also, because this isn't watercolor paper and I'm doing this wrong by doing this on mat board, whatever absorbency it has to want to soak in some of this water and kind of go between the various layers of, essentially glued paper. That's what mat board is. It's a whole bunch of layered, glued pieces of paper all, laminated together. That putting this down will also seal that. That's not normally a concern. It's a concern right now because I'm an idiot. Towery, you are editing your brief spoiler review. Oh, your spoiler review, not spoiler free. Spoiler review of Dawn of the Black Axe #2 for your podcast should be up soon. please share a link. Unless it's mean. If it's mean, I don't want to hear it. There is one review site. So back when the landscape has totally changed. Back when I first was releasing mouse guard issues, there was a whole industry in review sites, whether they were big corporate things like Comic Book Resources, or if they were, just a person. Here are the 10 comics I bought this month, and let me tell you why I like them, or why I don't like them, and everything in between. Well, that has definitely changed, and one of the review sites, I'm putting that in quotes, it really feels like, even though there's a photo of a person who's doing the review, the whole thing feels like weird AI that's just like it's describing the images in the book. Like describing the images and the plot, but kind of more the images. And I don't know if it's like, we're in the early days of this AI thing, but I don't know if it's too early that we're actually getting a cyclical effect where you're going to have people who essentially learn writing style by having read and looked at and dealt with a lot of AI content. Like you've learned how to write by reading AI. I think we're still too early for that, but that's how this thing reads. So if it is a human, it feels like they have looked at other AI sites and went, "Oh, this is the way things are written. This is the style." In the same way that, like if you were a kid and you read a lot of R.L. Stine and then you get to write your first short story for a class, it might read a little like R.L. Stine because that's the style guide essentially you were given to be influenced by. Anyways, it's a really strange review. So I love the idea that, Towery, you're going to be writing a review out there that I know for sure is not an AI review. I only, like I said, hope that it's positive. I've had a couple that are like, would be better if David was drawing it. It's like, how can you be disappointed that Gabe is doing stuff with this book that if I wrote it. If I had to draw this, it would not be as good of a book. I guarantee it. I would not be able to add in the drama. Let me check up here. First time getting to watch you live. Sorry. Nightsteel, I used to stream on something called Ustream. I don't know if I ever really streamed much to YouTube, and then I went to Twitch. I think it was Ustream, and then Ustream and Facebook Live, and then Facebook Live and Twitch, and then exclusively Twitch. Ron Deck, welcome. All right, this one's drying. I feel like maybe three pieces is enough to juggle, although this is still damp, which has me a little worried. This is the first one that I was working at. Still damp after juggling 3. I'm wondering if I shouldn't... shouldn't start on this. Maybe I should start on one of the big ones. This doesn't look like much on camera. It's really bright yellow, but it's going to end up being a whole thing with value. that once you start putting other colors down and other intensities and darknesses, this is going to look like white. So I think I need to let those dry. Maybe I do need to start working on one of the big ones. Which is going to just be a crazy juggling act. This is where I wish I had a big, big brush. Ron Deck, hello and welcome. It's been a minute. Just so you all know, I have a Patreon. So used to be that Shane McInnes over on my was moderator over on my Twitch stream and was quick with all the links. So all I had to do was mention something and bam, he'd put it in the chat. This is my first time streaming to YouTube live where it's not a Patreon event. So I'm not as crafty with all of that this time, especially since I'm working and I don't have a free hand to be pasting links in. But just to let you guys know, I do have a Patreon. And there are things at all tier levels, including free. There is I've had a blog for, I don't know, like 15 years now that posts weekly. That's all kinds of behind the scenes. Sometimes it's announcements. You know, not every week is a whole process post, but I would say most of them are. Or just showing lots and lots and lots of examples of something, like, here are all the commissions I did at such and such convention. So there's always lots of art on those blog posts. I am not getting rid of the blog, but I am adding in that you could get all that on Patreon. If I want to see your other content. Do you mean other posts you've done? Like other reviews? Have you reviewed the other issues of Dawn of the Black Axe? I'd love to see those. I've done searches for Dawn of the Black Axe review. And like I said, most of what I'm getting are these like bad AI written things. And then I've had, for the first issue, there were a couple that, like I said, were like, wah, wah, David's not drawing it. It was like, absolutely loved it, really good. Gabe's amazing. Could have been better. It's like, wait, what? Yeah, so what I was getting at is all of that stuff that's on my blog is now getting... I'm not going back and reposting everything, but moving forward, I am trying to make sure that every week when there's a new blog post, it's also over on Patreon for free. So you don't have to subscribe to my Patreon. You don't have to, or I don't know what the terms are. Subscribe in terms of like sign up so that it shows up in your feed. But you don't have to pay. And then I have different tiers. I have a $3 tier, a $5 tier, and a $10 tier. Each one of them comes with their own perks. Some of them are additional posts, discounts to the online store, some downloads. But I think in some ways, most importantly, I'm doing these Dawn of the Black Axe release parties the day that the issue comes out. There's only one more, although I hope to do one later on that's a special one, like with Gabe Rodriguez, the artist on the series. And all you have to do is be a paid member. I don't care what tier. I think you can even, like, I'm going to give you a hack here. I think you can even subscribe for a non-recommended tier amount. Like, you can subscribe for $1 and then get those. So yes, that's a good plan. I got a check from Twitch the other day, and I just thought, why am I still getting money? Who is subscribed enough where I'm still getting money? This doesn't feel right. I mean, I cashed the check, but yeah, and I'd be fine going, like, I could have switched to Twitch today, except, as I said, I have this all set up in terms of the streaming software to be broadcasting to YouTube, switching it back over to Twitch to just switch it back to this in, like, less than a month for the next Dawn of the Black Axe release party felt silly. I think, Towery, you're right. Some people like to be negative. I think that there is a thing that's not even about being negative. It's just because I felt this way about some artists, right? I really like that artist. And then when they handpick someone, the person they handpick, whatever the differences are enough to make me still go, yeah, but it's not the guy. Like, I really like that person's art, and now this is gonna forever feel like a second rate, no matter how competent or good the artist is. So I've felt that way. Now, I don't go talk about it online. I just internalize that and then go, I'm not gonna buy it. Okay, the illustration board holding up beautifully. I've got you can't even see it. I've got a very faint yellow on this. It's not buckling or curling. It's not doing that weird absorption thing. I'm just trying to make sure it's pretty even. All right, I will move this one to the side. I'll actually do that vertically. I bought this illustration board kind of by mistake. The stuff that I normally buy for Heroes, a sheet of it this size costs about $5. And I went to the art supply store to get a bunch of things. I needed some framing supplies. I needed this stuff. I needed a sheet of mat board. That was also part of the framing supplies. And when I was doing that, I saw that they had another illustration board on the shelf next to it that I thought was priced at $6 per sheet instead of $5. And it was considerably thicker, and the surface was much nicer. And I just went, ooh, that'd be nicer. That'd be nice. I don't mind upgrading, $1. That's nothing. And when I got up to the cash register, because I was buying I bought some glass for a frame. I bought a lot of stuff I don't normally buy. I was even ready to pay in cash, and then the total came up, and I was like, oh, I don't have that much cash. And it was way more than I expected, but I'm like, well, I guess I'm buying glass from an art supply store instead of like going to a hardware store. Essentially I'm paying a convenience fee or something like that. Or maybe, I bought a full sheet of mat board, which is that red mat board. And, okay, maybe that's what this is about. Maybe a full sheet of mat board is more expensive than I thought, considerably. And by the time I got home and looked at the receipt, because it was still kind of nagging at me, I looked and this stuff is $25 a sheet. Is anyone else having audio issues? Okay, good. Okay. I do not have plans to go back to a regular streaming schedule. What is the real obstacle with the Weasel War? It's been lots of different things at different times. There was a point where I was ready to start on it, and then my mom got really sick. She had Parkinson's. She was living in an assisted living place near us, and which I thought was going to make life easier, or not easier, but it was going to cut down on the number of times I had to deal with stuff. Because one, she was going to be very close. She was only going to be about 15 minutes away by drive instead of an hour. It also meant that there were other adults who were going to be watching out for her. And so I wouldn't have to run up for everything. And that wasn't the case. I think I was running up more once she came to live down this way than ever before. And then at some point she became my full-time job. Me and my wife's full-time job. She came to live here at the house when the assisted living place couldn't take her anymore because her needs had exceeded what they provided. And it was about 2.5, 3 years of being full-time caregiver for her. So that was part of it. And then there was a point of trying to get new stuff out quick because it had been a while since there had been new Mouse Guard stuff. So some free comic book day stories, and also just getting back into doing conventions and needing prints and things like that. I was just telling Julia, I was describing to Julia the concept in Magic the Gathering of upkeep. Because I was like, so if you're familiar with upkeep, I feel like there's an element to me working on convention stuff that's just upkeep. I don't even have time. I don't have any mana left to play cards from my hand. I'm just paying upkeep. And it's upkeep to go to conventions. It's I need a new print for this show. Oh, this show I have to do an auction piece for. This show I have to do this thing for. Oh, Boom needs a new thing for this. So there's some of that. There was the Bardrick's, the Bardrick book with Gabe, where the whole point of doing these spin-off books was we can have somebody else doing a Mouse Guard book, get new material out. I'm writing it, sure, but it still gives me some time to then not be doing everything so that I can get back to work on Weasel War. And when Gabe said, I want you to color it, that completely changed everything. And I agreed, thinking, I know how long it takes to color my own stuff. Well, it took me 3 times as long to color Gabe's. And it's not a fault of his. It's, I think, just, I've never really, especially page by page, colored anybody but myself. And so my time estimation was just off. Not just with how long it was going to take, but also that I was going to have to do a lot of changing and rethinking and changing even like the process of color because it was somebody else's. And I don't want to go into all the whys. And like I said, this isn't like a bash Gabe. It's not like a Gabe problem. It's a me not understanding. I'm not a professional colorist. I color my own work. You know, Dave Stewart would have understood what it took and probably also had a methodology for coloring Gabe's stuff that just would have gone faster because he's a professional colorist. So that's eaten up time. I still have a few duties left for the Dawn of the Black Axe. Somebody asked, what is next? Will somebody tell Nightsteel that there is sound? What will I do after Bardrick's story? Are we still streaming, by the way? What's happening? Okay. Looked like it had frozen there for a second. I want to do another one of those books. Haven't talked to Boom about an official timetable yet, but the plan is another one of those kind of books, drawn by somebody else, written by me, a different wielder of the Black Axe. But I will not be coloring it. So yeah, like I said, there was the mom issue, and then after my mom died in January of 2020, and we were sad, but we were also happy that she had a miserable end of her life, and I don't mean that. I mean that in the way that she knew it. She wasn't happy being trapped in her body. Even though she had lost most of her mental faculties, I knew from before she had passed, or before she had lost her mental faculties, she never wanted this for herself. She had watched her dad go through some of this. This was a horror show of what could happen. She did not want that. She told me when I was, I don't know, like 13, if that ever happens to me, put a gun in my mouth. Because she had watched that happen with her dad, so I knew she didn't want any of this. Obviously, I'm not going to commit murder, but you know, I knew that that wasn't something she wanted. And then she was so scared and frustrated all the time with life. I mean, she was seeing things that weren't there that were frightening. She was seeing her kids, me and my sisters, as doing horrible things that we were not doing. So what an awful part of her life. So we were Julia and I were very glad that that was over for her. And she was like, you know, we were like, okay, good. Now that that's done, she's at peace and we can get back to some semblance of life. You know, we never could leave the house together, Julia and I. Somebody always had to be here. And the rare occasions where we did, it meant that, like, one of my sisters, who are technically half sisters, they have a different mother, but they knew my mom growing up. She was a stepmom to them. They would help, but there was no reason for them to be as involved as I was. So they would help when they could. It was overwhelming, even for one person to try to deal with all of it, getting her up for the bathroom, feeding her, getting her medicine, everything. 'Cause she would also refuse. She would physically fight you because she thought, you know, when you were trying to get her up to go to the bathroom, you were taking her someplace bad. Anyways, it was a whole lot. So we were like, there, we have our lives back as well. And then COVID happened. And then with COVID happening, that changed everything. I had, you know, one, you're relying on book sales. Or I rely on book sales for income. And suddenly comic shops are closed. Now, granted, people started figuring out how to do, you know, curbside pickup and and obviously ordering online, and our online stores sales picked up, etc. at that time. But at the beginning, you're like, wait, nobody can go buy the books, and that's only part, and that's nationwide, right? And that's only part of my income. Another big part of my income is going to conventions and selling product, prints, t-shirts, etc., but also doing art for people. And I go, I don't have a way to do that. I can't, conventions are done. Looks like they're going to be done for at least a year. That's how we thought at the beginning, or at least 8 months, like basically this year's worth. Except at the very beginning, we were all, fingers crossed, hopeful. 8 months? 6 months? Obviously it was longer than that, but we're also realizing people are going to be losing income with their jobs. People might even be losing jobs. Like, there's going to be this whole thing where there's not going to be enough money to go around. How are we going to survive? How are we going to market? How are we going to even just keep everybody uplifted? Like the humanity part of it. So everything changed for us during COVID. I held 3 different online conventions with over 40 guests, which, by the way, all of those are going to be uploaded to YouTube privately, where you will have the link if you are a Patreon subscriber. I don't know what tier yet. I haven't decided, but that is going to eventually be a thing over on Patreon. If you want to go back and watch all the online concerts. 120 hours of online content, because I did three of those, and they were 40 hours each. Is that right? 40 hours each? 5 days. Or 45 hours each? I don't know. Anyhow. No, 40 hours each, yeah. Okay, anyways. So that changed things, the amount of online con stuff, the amount of doing commissions for conventions. And then when conventions ended, or when COVID ended, getting back into conventions and needing to get back on that horse. And I've worked on Weasel War on and off during that, but it's been really hard to kind of get back in and hit a groove. And then, like I said, I thought I was going to do it. With when Dawn of the Black Axe started getting worked on, and then the amount of work. I haven't touched Weasel War in months because of how much work Dawn of the Black Axe took, and trying to make sure that I got those pages done on time. So there you go. And here, part of the upkeep. I mean, just to go to some summer conventions, I need a little bit of new art to go in my portfolio, or to go in my art rack at conventions. Couple pieces there. I have to have pieces for Heroes. 1 and 2. One of those goes into the art auction. The other's available at my table. And then there's a charity event at Heroes for Parkinson's, which is what my mom had. And so I'm doing a piece for the Parkinson's auction. And that's upkeep basically just to go to Heroes / San Diego. There are other conventions that ask for donations for various charities, and they're all great. And it's like, at some point I have to start saying no to some of that. At some point I can't have a new item at a show. Like, hey, I'm not going to have a new print here or a new whatever. I wanted to have a new sketchbook out. Originally, I wanted to have a new sketchbook out for Motor City. That obviously wasn't happening. Then I thought San Diego, that's not going to happen. At this point, I'm looking at trying to get that done in time for New York. I don't even know if that's a thing. We did calendars for a couple of years. The truth about calendars is I have to have a calendar into the printer by August to make sure that I have it for my last, it's printed and returned to me before my last 2 conventions of the year, which are usually Baltimore and New York, and then put it in my online store so that people can buy them, because come January 1st, everybody expects a calendar to be discounted. So I need to have practically sold out of every calendar by December 25th. And that means having it done in August, and we're in June, or almost in June, and I haven't come up with anything new for a calendar, so that's just not happening. I'd rather be working on Weasel War or a new Free Comic Book Day story for next year. David, my hope is we get to do all the Black Axe books. I went through the print set that you mentioned in the panel, and just jotted down, like, even one sentence, kind of, what kind of a story is this? And the Tynan story, I wrote down a note about what that's about and why. Totally hope to get to that. Some of the others, I was like, I don't know. But Tynan was one where it was like, just looking at the picture, I kind of like inspired myself to go, yeah, that'd be a cool story to do. Yeah, the second, the fourth, oh, I'm blanking on all of mine. I have to pull up my little print set cheat sheet. First, I knew what I wanted to do. Second, I knew what I wanted to do. Fourth, I knew. Seventh, that's Tynan. Eighth, I have an idea. And 10th. Those are the ones where it was like, I have something definitive. The other ones I jotted down a smattering of ideas about, oh, it could be about this or it could be about that. I even told Julia the one for the Kellinaw, for a Kellinaw one. Which, like I said during the panel, I just can't quit Kellinaw, apparently. And she was just like, oh my god, that's so good. We have to get, at some point, we just have to get to all 10 of these so that there's a Kellinaw one. Okay, I think there was one more question before I get to move it. I have a Patreon. Yes, let me see if I can quickly get my Patreon link. Easily enough. I've got my keyboard way off to the side, so I can't... easily type. I'm going to try to put it in the... There's the link for Patreon. And thank you, David Maxwell. I just saw your Patreon thing come through. I appreciate that. Beep boop. Okay. There was a question. Yes, the Animal Farm print is available. Oh boy, I miss having a Shane. Just a minute and I'll get you the Animal Farm piece. Easier if I had my keyboard closer. The Animal Farm piece I was using as a protest print for things going on in the world that have to do with tyranny and bullies and inequality. Animal Farm is not in the public domain, so I cannot make it a print that I am charging you for, but if you go to my blog, the link that I just posted, there are links for getting a high-res version that you can print and put. It's an 11 by 17 print. You can print it out at home if you have it, or you can take it to Kinko's or whatever. You can show them this blog post even if they ask about copyright or whatever. And it's for your classroom, for your library, or for your home use, just to kind of protest the piggish nature of all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. Also, every time I post that on social media, I get a whole bunch of people who are in the current tyrannical camp that want to remind me, that's about communism, right? And I have to either quickly type out well, it's actually about the nature of hoarding power, where communism was the nasty version of that when that book was written. But it really, really, really has to do with tyranny, power, inequality, the promise of equality turning into inequality when a very small portion get power, because absolute power corrupts absolutely. Anyhow, okay, what are the dimensions of these pieces of your paper I'm working on? Complete animation. This larger tailspin piece and this larger Rescue Rangers piece, which both look like I've done nothing but have a super pale yellow wash on them, are 16 by 20. The smaller pieces on mat board, this one is, did I write it somewhere? This one is 11 by 14. And then these are 9 by 12s. And I'm going to start working on one of these 9 by 12s right now. I'm also going to turn on... I'm going to put my light pad up on top of my scanner bed and turn it on just to get another light source, kind of bouncing light around the room. Here, here. Well, thank you for being in agreement with me on that. All right, watercolor. You always work light to dark. I'm going to grab this color comp that I did digitally. Grab some paper towel. Yeah, I don't think this mat board was a good idea. I think this is... I'm almost going to be working on this more like it's marker. It's kind of the way this is going to behave, I think. Rather than watercolor. And they can be similar mediums, but they're just different enough. Well, this is my bad for not thinking ahead. Do you ever plan on remaking the Art of Mouse Guard books? No. That was a 10-year anniversary thing. They were expensive to produce. And they're the kind of thing that is not really... I want to put this lightly, like I'm not trying to scold you or anything. They're not really the kind of thing that's worth reprinting in terms of like profitability for the publisher. That being said, I would be totally up for if we wanted to do and it wouldn't be a 20-year because we just passed the 20-year and we didn't do it, but like a 25-year anniversary art of book that was maybe a condensed version. Maybe we take some of the stuff out of that one, but we add all kinds of new stuff. But Boom hasn't said anything about it. It's not a publishing priority. I'd rather keep... Like, my publishing priority is let's keep things in print that I want to keep in print, and let's keep going on these Dawn of the Black Axe style books. Let me move down the camera. The old Disney afternoon shows are mostly pretty great. Some of them are uneven. There are some Gummy Bears episodes that I haven't seen since, but I remember them very fondly as just being amazing. And I've seen some other people post online that like those episodes really stood out. Like the one where Tummy and Cubby and Gruffy go to that island and they meet Artie, the sculptor who's sculpting the dragon into the side of the turns out volcano. Oh, that's great, Ron. My dad also has that book on probably too prominent of display in his living room, and his living room gets a lot of sun, which has turned the cover art very pink. I'm probably overpainting that bit, getting into the shadows too much. Complete animation, will I be streaming on YouTube often going forward? I don't know about streaming often, period. I used to stream regularly over on Twitch. I had to take a break from that because I just had too many commitments going on. And then I also found that when I kind of got past some of those and could say, hey, maybe it's time to go back to streaming. And don't take this the wrong way if you are a regular viewer over there. I didn't miss it. And by that, I don't mean I didn't miss you. What I didn't miss was the grind. I was finding that making sure I had something to work on, being on for that long, not being able to, really do things in my day because, it's a streaming day. And I know that I could have said, hey guys, I'm not going to be able to stream today because I've got X, Y, and Z. And I did that occasionally. But for the most part, I didn't want to break the run with you guys. And so I wouldn't. And it made things difficult. So that's the part that I didn't miss. And found it very easy to go, maybe I'm not going to go back to streaming because I'm getting more done when I don't. Now that said, I will be doing the Dawn of the Black Axe book release parties here on YouTube. But I don't know how much I'm going to be streaming otherwise. I have to real quick get another paintbrush from over here. Where is that other paintbrush? Oh. Oh, I see. They're already out. Just to make a fool of me. All right. So one of the reasons that I'm doing this is I did actually miss having the interactions, having an audience, being able to talk about what I'm working on and why. I think that it actually goes a long way to some of the success of my, like COVID era issues, was being able to have a way to reach out to fans. To be able to say, hey, new thing in the online store. Because, social media can be a real bummer in that regard, where you think that you're like, there, I've posted it, and whatever, because of throttling or, subscribing versus non-subscribing or verified or whatever, you later find out, oh, nobody saw that. Nobody saw that post. That's a bummer. Tramari, just to let you know, you can go to the Patreon, you can sign up for free, and there are weekly posts that go up. They're the same as the ones on my blog post, but there are weekly posts that go up on Patreon. Then, if your finances change, you can also do it month by month. You can pay for a month, and then when you do that, you don't just get that month's stuff. You can scroll back and look at everything. And if you have to cancel, you have to cancel. I understand that. And then you just don't have access to that stuff until you pay it again. But you have access to everything I've ever posted on Patreon at whatever tier level for a one-time payment. And then you can cancel. But there is free stuff there, and I have different tiers too. So there's, a $3 tier, a $5 tier, and a $10 tier. Well, thank you, Complete Animation, that you enjoyed my Twitch streams and that I was the only streamer you consistently tuned into. Bob the Odd, thank you so much for enjoying the new book. I'm very proud of it. A question for you while you're here. What do you feel about the idea of mice having technology on par with rifles and tanks? I thought I saw an artwork like that and made your own World War One. I did at one point have an idea for... that was way before I started drawing Mouse Guard as a comic. So there's a drawing of like a kind of something between like Indiana Jones, Rocketeer, but yeah, probably more like a World War I thing, standing on a Zeppelin with I think flintlock pistols. And yeah, I just don't know that I want to do it. I don't know that I'd ever want to do that. Yeah, go have a good sleep, Jacob. Sariel, welcome. An elk in the audience. Bardrick would approve. Yeah, this is acting way different on this mat board than on the illustration board, and I'm going to have to be very careful kind of how I do these. That's my own fault. It was just there were scraps of mat board, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do some paintings on those? And I'm totally using the wrong tool for the wrong job. If I was using acrylics or even like a gouache, I could get away with this, but I'm not. So it's just all weirdness. It's going on like marker. Like the second you lay it down, you have an edge, and it's only going to blend for a very short amount of time. Unlike watercolor, where, you know, it all is kind of like a wet film on top that then dries and absorbs in. This is a different kind of working beast here. I see a question. I'm gonna get this yellow part here done. It also looks way paler on screen than it is in real life. Like this is getting darker way quicker than I'm used to if I was working on illustration board or watercolor paper or something like that. So I will get to the question as soon as I have this kind of in a state where I feel comfortable. Okay, yellow. There we go. All right. Do I ever plan on making an atlas for mouse guard? Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to do, there are two kind of resource books that would straddle the line between being about the fiction of mouse guard and also being a thing for role-playing game enthusiasts, which is I want to do a 10 by 10 sized book. Although maybe it's, I don't know. I would like to do it 10 by 10. One is a book of matriarchs. That's all the past matriarchs. Basically an illustration on one side of a matriarch, and then the other page would be a full write-up about their history. That's the simple layout. It might be more involved than that with other illustrations, their description cascading onto more than one page. I don't know yet, but that's one book. And another is an atlas that would have every map I've ever done plus some, every cutaway, 2-page cutaway spread that you've seen in any of my books. Let me grab one. You know, when you get to the back and you get to these cutaways of locations, it would recollect every one of those, but basically every spot on any map would have at least one 2-page spread like that with a cutaway. At least. So that's my goal for the atlas. But I think storybooks come first. Quick question, will I reprint my mouse guard coloring book? So Boom does not want to. But in turn told me that I could. And it really has just come down to bandwidth of when did Julia and I have the time, and is it the kind of thing that we make a new coloring book? Do we just reprint the old one? Do we do a Kickstarter where it's both? Which then again, talk about bandwidth. It's a lot more work to put together a Kickstarter. For right now, the Patreon is my coloring book. I put up coloring pages as one of the rewards that go out each month. And so far, nothing from the original coloring book has appeared there. So it's all new stuff. You know, or new to you. In terms of, you know, coloring experience. You might have seen it before, but you have not colored it before. Let me get through. Gentle Savage, are there any details I can share about the canceled movie? What the movie story would have been about, assuming I'm not under NDA. I can share. I tend not to want to share too much because, you know, Wes still wants to do that movie. And I mean, obviously, he's going to be a different person by the time that opportunity would ever potentially present itself. So how much would he want to keep and how much would he want to change? I don't know. But I can tell you that the majority of the story was following the idea of the fall book. There were some drastic changes in some things, mostly having to do with kind of who some characters were or their backstories. So it's like their personalities were all pretty much the exact same that you would recognize in the book. I don't have a problem saying Conrad changed dramatically. Conrad was a totally different character. He was a like well-respected member of the guard, like a captain, like who oversaw a lot of stuff all going on at one city. He was not a drunk like I have him in the books. So like that, very different. But everybody else was pretty much the same in terms of how they acted. But there were things about them that were different. Beyond that, for story, I don't really want to go into it. And yeah, I mean, I can share a lot of info. I have in the past. I've done a video. I'm trying to think of even where that is. I guess it's not up anymore because it was over on Twitch. Well, no, I moved it over to YouTube. There's a thing with a bunch of the creative people from the VFX team that's up here on YouTube on this channel, where some things got talked about Mouse Guard. Yeah, I would be there too, obviously. World War I Mouse Guard thing you did for college was an animatic. Gotcha. Your professor told you to reconsider your life choice. Well, I'm sorry about that. That sounds kind of awful. Night Steel. I would love to get Swords and Strongholds reprinted. Luke has the rights to the game publication. We had just kind of reconnected. We hadn't been in touch for a while. We had just reconnected at the end of last year with the idea of, you know, this year kind of talking about seeing if it was possible to publish Swords and Strongholds maybe under a different like a different publisher, like, because he's basically self-publishing when he does stuff. You know, like maybe could Boom do it or could another company do it? And we had just talked about that being a thing, and then I got bogged down with Dawn of the Black Axe, and then by the time my schedule was lightening up, all this tariff stuff hit the fan, and there's just no reason to talk about what to do for... Why is that? Why is the... I don't know why the art was like that. That's weird. And yeah, love to do a board game. We actually kind of had something in the works, and again, tariffs just within the last couple of weeks completely killed that thing. So don't know that it's done forever done, but it definitely screwed up my life. Let me see. I got to catch up on these questions. Always wanted to ask who Idris Elba was. Kellena. Who's the biggest influence on my art style? Also, am I an anime fan at all? I was an anime fan in the 90s. I have a weird relationship with anime now where I feel like because it was so tied up with a just post-puberty emotion, and I feel like a lot of the content, some of the content is kind of aimed at those people at that age range. And look, I'm not judging. If you're an adult and you love anime, awesome. I'm not judging. I'm telling you how it makes me feel, and I cannot disassociate that time in my life and watching anime. And the closest analogy I can think of is it felt totally appropriate for me to go hang out on a playground from the time that I was in kindergarten, even up through, graduating high school, or even just after graduating high school, like hanging out at a playground, even if other kids are there, nobody's looking at you funny. But when you're in your 40s and you're hanging out at a playground and you don't have any kids with you, it's wrong. It feels wrong. It feels like I'm a creep and I don't belong here. This isn't my playground anymore. And that's the feeling I have when I go and watch anime these days. So that's my own personal thing. You can love it. I have other adult friends who I used to watch anime with when I was that age who still watch anime. I don't judge them at all. Like, if they don't have that feeling when they watch it, God bless them. Biggest influences on my art style. Golden Age illustrators like Edmund Dulac, Howard Pyle, Arthur Rackham. I think Rick Geary is an influence. Comic artist Rick Geary, comic artist Mike Mignola, although I think most people would never see it in my work. Eastman and Laird. I think there's some texturing stuff that I got from those early Turtles comics. Arthur Adams. And then much more recently, Gabriel Rodriguez, Jeremy Bastian, Nate Pride. I would say they influence how I draw now. If I could go ahead with the movie, but Wes was not able to do it, who else would I have in mind, if anyone? I don't. And the only reason I don't is because it's really rare that I would get any kind of say. It's really going to boil down to a studio saying, we want to do it and we're willing, to pay for the rights, which instead of me getting the money for the rights this time, it would be Fox getting reimbursed for what they already paid me. So it's going to be a studio. I could have some suggestions about directors and stuff, but in some ways, having something locked into your head, like this is what I want, because I had that about some of the actor casting, and then when actors were different, it was hard. It was just hard to readjust my brain to go, oh, it's different though. It's different than what you had been thinking about for years. Like, you've had this one thing locked into your head and now it's just different. It's not bad. In fact, some of it was amazing. It's just not who you were thinking of. So I don't want to get in. I don't want to trick my brain into getting future disappointed when it doesn't work out the way I was thinking. Yeah, Idris was Kellanah, not Midnight. Andy Serkis was Midnight. Would I ever re-release the Wielders of the Black Axe print set? No. I'm so sorry that there was a water issue. If I had a set, David, I would give it to you. And I don't. I have one set for myself. Actually, I don't even know if I have a set for myself. If I do, I think it's loose. But I think... Yeah. I don't think I do. And the reason is they were impossible to sell at conventions because you had to spread them out. If you just put the envelope out, nobody knew what it was. And then the sell-through rate in the online store was so slow. I don't know that it's worth a reprint level. That being said, maybe if we get to all 10 books, I would consider going, hey, we're re-releasing this. But at this point, probably not. I'm sorry about your water issue. That's awful. Have you ever heard of Chronicles of Mismantled? It's about a hero squirrel. No, I have not. Oh man, that would have been epic. I missed what I was talking about when you typed that. What would have been epic? The movie? Were we talking about movie stuff? I can't remember. When you write characters in your stories, are their personalities something you come up with on your own, or are their personalities inspired by characters from other stories? Little of both. So I'm definitely influenced by the Joseph Campbell Hero of a Thousand Faces monomyth legend stuff. But most of my understanding of it, I mean, I studied humanities in high school where we talked about this stuff, but, and you know, I had to study some of it for a test back in high school, but it's been a long time. I'm not familiar with the ins and outs of the Epic of Gilgamesh. But you know what I am really familiar with in terms of making Joseph Campbell's ideas a working vocabulary is Star Wars. And so when I was looking at the hero's journey and Hero of a Thousand Faces kind of trajectory, those certainly weighed in to then when I think about certain characters and archetypes and twists and reveals and things like that. It's not a one-to-one by any means. And then other characters and some characters overlap where it's like it's a combination of an archetype trope from the monomyth or hero's journey, and some of it is based on a real person like a friend of mine. Saxon, for instance, is based on some of my worst personality traits. Whereas Kenzie is based on some of my friends' best personality traits. Which I thought made for an interesting combo, an interesting pair, where they both are friends and in agreement on the end goal, but their methodologies for how to get there are going to be very different based on their personalities. And I already know how that dynamic works because I've literally lived it. Thank you about saying that my artwork is beautiful. I appreciate that. Have I ever heard of Brandon Sanderson's work? Normal books. Yes, a friend of mine is a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. He has tried to get me to read Sanderson's books. I tried to read Way of Kings. It did not go well for me. I could not get through it and hated it. He kept talking about it. I tried it again. Ironically, my friend Jesse Glenn was also on the trip where... so Jeremy Bastian is the friend who loves Sanderson. And Jesse Glenn, real life Kenzie, was on that trip where Jeremy brought up Sanderson again and was like, man, you gotta try it. You just have to try reading those books again. They're so good. You'd love them. So both Jesse and I tried reading them again. And I just, again, could not get into it. I felt bad. Like, I'm trying to read this for a friend who thinks I'd like it. I should probably get, most of the way through it so that I can say it's not for me. And I just could barely even do that. I found myself so bored. Found it so dull. Also found so much of it disjointed, which I know some of that is the point, that it kind of all reconnects at the end, but it wasn't holding me. I know, Brandon Sanderson's not going to cry any tears that I am not among his legions of fans. He's doing just fine. I'm not even meaning to, crap on him. It just wasn't for me. And then when I was saying I just didn't like it, and Jeremy's like, how could you? It's so good, and X, Y, and Z reason. And I turned to Jesse, and he just went, yeah, I felt the same. It just kind of went nowhere for me. It was a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it held nothing. And I was like, okay, well, at least I'm not alone in that feeling. So yeah, good on you if you're a huge fan. That's awesome. I'm not here to yuck anybody's yums. It just wasn't for me. But thank you also for the compliment. Obviously, if you're a Sanderson fan and you're saying something about my work is reminding you of his stuff, that's a huge compliment, and I say thank you. Any thoughts on Andor Season 2? If I have seen it, I have. I think Andor is fantastic. I know that there are people out there who dislike it for all kinds of reasons. A good friend of mine, a comic artist, kind of summed up Andor Season 2 just as it was starting. Just as it was starting, where he said, I watched the first Andor, didn't find it as engaging as the rest of the world did, but to get ready for Season 2, did the, whatever it was, Disney Plus Season 1 recap video. It's watch that, watch the first batch of Season 2 episodes, and my reaction, meaning his reaction, was... Andor is Star Wars for people who are embarrassed and ashamed to say they like Star Wars. I actually held that in my head as the season started and was kind of like, oh yeah, there is some stuff here where it's like they're almost purposely trying to make it, less Star Wars-y, more accessible to non-Star Wars audiences. But yeah, once the story actually kicked in, I was like, no, I don't agree with that. He's entitled to his opinion. I'm not even going to beat him up on it. I get where he's coming from. There are visuals about Andor that, are not contradictory, but kind of relish not being as Star Wars-y, or almost like it's setting it in the real world instead of in a fictional world. Like there was one whole scene where Julia's like, oh, we've got Star Wars Bridgerton now. Right? I see it. It's just in the end, how did that affect the story and my feeling about it? And my feeling about it is That series was amazing. I think it's going to take multiple rewatches and honestly years to unpack how amazing it was. I think, and so one of the things I saw about Andor, and this isn't a spoiler at all. Don't worry, I'm not spoiling anything. I saw an article kind of talking about, you know, why Tony Guillory, is it Guillory or Gilroy? Anyways, creator of Andor TV show, was so successful, was that he's doing the classic thing that comes up as a storytelling lesson, which is show, don't tell. Right? If you have something that the audience needs to know, show them. Don't have a character standing there saying the information. Show it. Make it visual. And that he took that to the extreme, where there are things that are being said in characters' faces and actions that explain everything about their current state of being, how trapped or horrified or whatever they feel, and that it's not telegraphed unless you read between the lines. And I actually think that can be taken to the extreme, or even more of an extreme, where that's why I'm saying, like, I think it's going to take a while to really unpack what that show is, because I think there's stuff happening between the lines, both written and not written dialogue. That you don't know how to appreciate yet. I really, really, really enjoyed it. The last several episodes, the tension was real. Julia and I were literally edge of our seats. Julia was going, "Come on, come on, oh my God!" And I even pointed out, like, we know because of, you know, Rogue One and such, like, we already kind of know the outcome of this character. And she's like, "I know, but it's still, the tension is so real." And she was right. The tension was very real. That's an impressive thing to do. I'm going to keep painting for a little bit here. I see that there are more things coming up in chat. I can't stop while this is wet and in the wet state that it's in. Yeah, this is acting really weird again because of the mat board. And I'm just doing my best here to... It's going on like there's marker. Like, that's where we're getting these weird seams. It's like overlap seams when you use markers. It's like I have to do this, build it up, let it dry, build it up, even more than normal watercolor. And it seems to be like reactivating the yellow that's underneath in a really strange way. So let me get all these purple parts done. Then I'll catch up on questions. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. I appreciate all your questions, chatting with me, keeping me company. This is the part of streaming that I miss. problem is I also really like doing like panels. And so, and this was a thing that happened all the time on my old Twitch stream, was that someone would ask a question and I'd go, oh, let me explain that to you better. Here is a diagram, or I'll pull up the file and we can actually talk about it for real. Ugh, yeah, this board makes me worry about doing the other pieces, but I'm gonna keep going, I guess. I'm gonna put this one to the side. Oh wait, somebody asked a question. Here, I'll let that dry and I'll start answering questions. Have I ever read any of the Witcher books? No. I've watched a few episodes of the show. Maybe even just one episode. Sorry, man, got to go. Thanks for being one of my favorites. Well, thank you. Thanks for hanging out while you could. Thank you, Nightsteel. That's very nice of you to say. Thought Season 2 was better than Season 1, but Luthen's speech in Season 1 is amazing. Yes. I mean, Season 1 had some really cool stuff. Season 2 had some... And they both seasons had these weird... It's not like a bottle episode, but it becomes this like strange... What are we doing here and why? And for how long? Moments. But yeah, I don't know. Season 1 had some amazing moments. Season 2 was probably better just because it was really building to something. Who's this character I'm painting right now? This is Siobhan, matriarch of the Mouse Guard in the era of like 915 of Mouse Guard time. Have you read or seen Berserk? Not really, no. I might have seen an episode of Berserk back in the mid-90s, but no, not in general. Like I said, I haven't watched anime on any regular basis for a very long time. That episode at the end of the Gore storyline was so intense, yes. Yeah, the whole Gorman thing was intense. The scenes on the Death Star were intense. The moment on Coruscant in the apartment towards the end was pretty intense. That was the part where Julia and I were going like, come on, an edge of our seats. Do I play any video games? So I'm weird with video games. I like playing really old school games. There's a game called Moria that I really enjoy playing. It's an old text or alphanumeric DOS game. I play that. I play a game on I have a Steam Deck, and there I play a game called Rounds. Although I get very discouraged with that because most people are playing on a PC with a mouse and the controls are totally different. And on a Steam Deck, it makes aiming just harder than it is for PC users. And they also have a screen that's the size of whatever desktop they're using, and I have a little portable gaming thing. So I play that until I get too discouraged and want to throw it across the room. And I play a game called Kingdom 2 Crowns. That one can get frustrating though too. But those are the games that I play now. I mean, I used to play games more regularly when I was in college. My college roommate still is a huge gamer. And it meant that in college, like, we had every system. Because and like at the time, this is when like we had a Japanese Dreamcast before it was available here in the States. And that's the benefit of having a roommate like that he's importing all this stuff. And then once we weren't roommates anymore, like once, you get out of the dorms, we had an apartment for a little while, and then once we got our own places each, I'd go over there and I'd play some games every now and then, but it became just less regular, and I just never caught up with, like, I was never a big enough gaming person that I was like, well, I have to get the new system, or I have to, you know. And I'm on a Mac, so the amount of gaming stuff that I can do is really limited. Without something, and I don't want to do a gaming PC. I don't want to eat up the hours that I know I would do if I had someplace else to put my time and energy, like a way to distract me. But also, I don't even know, like, there have been a couple people in my life who were like, I want to play games with you. What if I just bought you or gave you my old gaming computer? And I'm like, I literally don't know where I would set up a desk with another computer. Like, in some ways that would be awesome, but I don't know where that happens. We're going to let that one dry a little while. I should move on to one of the others. You know, One Kingdom, Two Crowns, lovely art style. Yeah, it's a really cool game. It's a little frustrating in that it's not as straightforward about what you're supposed to do at any given time. And I've had a couple times where, like, I can't develop an area and I can't figure out why. Like, my workers just won't go out to that spot and work on it, and it's like right outside the gates. It's not like I'm... Well, that's really unfortunate. That looks like something right there, and now I can't get rid of it. This is the problem with working on this mat board. We'll see how that dries. Maybe it dries different. Oh, it's just gonna look like... It's just gonna look like something rude. So I have to do some more symbols that are hidden to make it not look like that. I'm going to put that off to the side. Did I ever watch the CG Clone Wars? No. Nope. It was weird for me. It was a weird show that I just didn't enjoy or appreciate. All right, let's do something different here. Let me get a... good green going for this one. Have I ever seen Arcane? I have not. But Battle Chasers, yeah. At least I don't think I've seen or read Arcane. I don't know. Alright, I'm going to be covering so much ground here. This is a painting of Saxon, and this is the one that I think will be going into the auction for Parkinson's at Heroes, part of the Michael J. Fox Foundation and Team Cul-de-sac. And obviously because of my connection to Parkinson's because of my mom, it's one of those that I'm always happy to do a piece for. It just boils down to if I can when leading up to Heroes. But knew I was going to be doing the other paintings, and I've got kind of a spare moment. I'm waiting for I'm actually in a weird waiting period. I'm waiting for original art to arrive from Gabriel Rodriguez for the hardcover edition that I need to color. I think the editor actually wanted everything turned in today, and I don't think that's happening. But I think he knows. I think he's okay with it ultimately. But I can't color that until it comes in, so whoops. That's tail right there. Trying not to do that. Yeah, this is a weird feeling painting on this. It's just different, and like I said, I keep saying it, but it's going down like marker. Like your chances to blend just go away the second you've put it down. You're getting these like weird lines. Where normally watercolor, as long as it's still wet, is gonna blend. I guess that'll just make this look different than every other watercolor piece I've done. It'll make it that much more special. I mean, it might end up being that I'm having to go into this and do way heavier work. Almost like an acrylic painting. try to cover up some of the nonsense. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. I might be overreacting and it's just... It looks weird while it's drying. Oh, I just realized I did not do any photos to do a blog post showing the process. Whoops. I also was supposed to leave that little spot right there open. Yes, this is Saxon. A country I would love to travel to. I've never been to Australia or New Zealand. Both are on the bucket list. And then I always love being in the UK. So Scotland, Northern Ireland, Ireland as well, but that's not part of the UK. But Northern Ireland, Scotland, and I think we've crossed over into Wales, but we've never done like an official visit in Wales. But yeah, some of my favorite places on earth. Very comfortable, but we've been there a number of times before. I'd still like to go back. The last time I went there, I have some bad memories associated with it because it was on that trip. I was really having a hard time. I was actually suffering some pretty heavy depression that I just couldn't get out of. It was just before COVID, which I actually think we were there for like New Year's of 2020. I think COVID was happening there and that I had it even before, anyone knew what COVID was. I mean, obviously some doctors knew, but in terms of like the mass public, we didn't have outbreaks, public outbreaks yet. But I think based on all my symptoms, etc., I had it. I think I was also going through some pretty severe depression. And then on like one of the last days of the trip, we got the news that my mom was dying. And we had to cut the trip short and leave family there. So that they could round out the rest of the trip while Julia and I flew home. And so that was the last time I was in England, and I would really love to get a do-over, have an experience to replace that one. That's just the England I love, without all that other crap going on. Give me a second to get all this paint down, so I don't end up with more lines in the work than I really need. And then I'll get back to your questions. And these branches don't need to be green, but since I painted them green in the ones above, because I want these to match, I need to paint these green so that when I put browns on top of it, they will have the same kind of like undercoat. Basically everything except for Saxon is getting this pale green treatment right now. I should get Joe Mad to do the next Black Axe book. Well, I'm not going to get him to do the next book, but I'll tell you a little story. Joe Mad offered to do a variant cover for Mouse Guard ages ago, and then when we reached out, we just couldn't get a hold of him. And then I think I saw him one more time after that, because he doesn't get out to a whole lot of conventions. I saw him one more time after that, and I brought it up, like, oh, we tried reaching out to you. I think it was for a Legends of the Guard variant cover. We tried reaching out to you and, didn't get anywhere. And he was like, I'm so sorry about that, but definitely next time I'll do it. So, yeah, if it comes up for Weasel War as a possibility, that is a possibility. But I could not afford him for a full book. I mean, I also know, he hasn't put out any books of his own for a while. I have a feeling doing panel-by-panel storytelling on a schedule is not something he's up for doing. So, I think we're on the same page in that he would be a great addition to the Mouse Guard world, but I don't think we're on the same page that he's the right fit for one of these books. Okay, let me rinse out my brush, and we're going to let that dry for a bit. Clone Wars was beautiful art. The CG Clone Wars was an absolute insult. Clone Wars cartoon that was Gennady Tartakovsky, I enjoyed to some degree, although I thought the stylization on that was also very strange. The Clone Wars CG thing was... I know that the movie that they did, the one that introduced Ahsoka Tano, was supposed to be kind of an homage to the old Thunderbirds marionette show. But as it went on, and it's almost like they got rid of some of the herky-jerkiness and some of the more stylized, chiseled look. It's kind of like how early episodes of What If were heavily influenced by Joseph Lendecker. And they were putting all these things in to make it look like a Joseph Lendecker painting. And then later episodes, they don't. It's just a little bit more smoothed over. It's a little more homogenous. That's how the Clone Wars stuff was for me. Is it went from this kind of stylized, kind of paying homage to Jerry Anderson marionettes, and then once the Clone Wars show started, and then they got further into, what's the one? Rebels? Is that the one with the Jedi slingshot kid? Rebels and Bad Batch and all that. It's smooth. It's much more smooth, and it's not really what I'm looking for. Yes, this is Saxon. What are some of my favorite genres outside of fantasy? When it comes to I'm a big Stephen King fan. Which some of that's fantasy, obviously. So horror when it's not super gory, blood and gutsy. When it comes to TV shows and movies, I also like a lot of true crime. I like some suspense, but I definitely some form of fantasy is a big deal for me. So even if it's not high fantasy, Dark Crystal is fantasy. That's my jam. Who are some of my favorite authors, writers? Am I a fan of Daredevil at all? I never was a fan of I never got into I shouldn't say I wasn't a fan. I never got into the comics. Loved the Netflix show. I think he's a cool character, but yeah, I've never really gotten into it. Yeah, it is too bad the Dark Crystal show got canceled. It was fantastic. Favorite authors and writers. So I up until she became someone who I don't want to support in any way, Really appreciate the author of the Harry Potter books, I should say I appreciated the Harry Potter books. But you can do what you want. I'm through with her her nonsense. I think she thinks she's helping people and she's hurting people in the process. If you feel that a group is being marginalized, it doesn't mean that you squash another group to bring awareness or hurt another group. You don't villainize. Not just villain. Anyways, yeah. So Stephen King, a big one for me. I just recently got all the way through the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think maybe only for the second time. I can't even remember if I finished it the first time. I can't remember if I finished Return of the King. I've always had an aversion to Tolkien's writing. I like his concepts, but I've always had an aversion to his writing. Decided to try it again because the Andy Serkis versions of the audiobooks were out. That definitely helped. And it's not just like, oh wow, what a great Gollum. It was like, no, it's better read. Than the old versions. And actually, there's some stuff in Fellowship of the Ring that still bugs the crap out of me that I think ended up informing my opinion of Tolkien. And I get that he's writing a certain style of this version of history, this paying homage to folklore and old epics, who begat who, and let's have a ballad where the ballad actually tells more of a song. I don't have a problem with that in theory. It's just that it becomes stylistically kind of all he does, and we get so many songs and poems in Fellowship that end up kind of going away and becoming more, more like a seasoning. Think of it like a seasoning. It's the kind of thing that you want to season your meal with. But if someone put all that seasoning on the appetizer, way too much of it, you're kind of like, this is too much. There's too much clove or thyme or nutmeg or rosemary. It's overpowering. That's too much. And that's how a lot of Fellowship is for me. Even though in some ways, story-wise, in terms of like the action, if you strip away the seasoning and just get to the narrative, the beginning part is my favorite part. The whole like going on the quest to the point that the Fellowship breaks. That's my favorite part of the whole story. But the book has some things that I found hard. But I enjoyed the circus version. It made that more palatable where I could get through it all. And it just gets into kind of straight narrative pacing by the time you're going later. Where are we? Where are we? Happy I got out from that depression. Keep triumphing, King. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it still comes back every now and then. That was a low point. I think there was a lot of stuff going on there. I think the situation with my mom was getting on me. I think there was some other stuff going on too that just had to do with my headspace. That is I'm past that. Hopefully, I'm past some of those things. I don't think he does a lot of that anymore. Yeah, he was never on time. Joe Mad. But I'm sure we can get a cover out of him. I would hope we can get a cover out of him at some point. Clone Wars got better. Don't disagree as far as Rebels goes. Story-wise, yeah, I mean, I guess my problem with all the animated things was it felt like, look, there is material made for kids. There is material made so there's material that's made just for kids that adults find intolerable. There is material that's made for kids that parents or that adults can enjoy watching with their kid, but no adult would sit down and watch it on their own for the most part. Then there's stuff that kind of works for all ages. Sometimes that's because there's like almost a dual narrative going on. Looney Tunes worked a lot like that, where there was this whole level of jokes that only adults were getting. Then there's stuff more like a lot of the Pixar movies that just works for everybody. And I remember thinking that a lot of the Star Wars animated stuff was aimed with an lower age range there, that kind of brought down like a lowest common denominator, that brought down the level of, I don't want to say quality, the level of discourse, the style of storytelling, to a level that was more like it was aimed at kids. And it was in that, for me, it fell into the category of, if I had kids who were really into Star Wars, I would totally be watching this with them. But as an adult, I'm not going to sit and watch this by myself. I ever watched The Expanse? I have a friend who's really into The Expanse. I think, here's a weird thing. I actually think I'm not a big sci-fi fan. I think I'm a fantasy fan that finds a lot of sci-fi really boring, which is a weird thing to, and I've only come to that realization in the last couple of years, where people have recommended sci-fi to me that they really think is great, and I just, for whatever reason, can't get into it. It's definitely a fault of my own. Sci-fi is not to blame. It's me. Oh, it's raining. Oh, it just started raining. Still bummed we never got it. Yeah, second season of the Dark Crystal show. Lanterns TV looks interesting. Sure, I'm willing to give that a try. Took me years to find your illustrated Wind in the Willows. Hasn't been announced yet. It's been out of print for years. It will be coming back in print. When am I going to do a full Winnie the Pooh? I do not have any intention of illustrating Winnie the Pooh. I followed in Ernest H. Shepard's footsteps once. No intention of trying to do that again, especially with something like Pooh. What kind of music am I a fan of? Lots of different stuff. I know some people are like, all kinds. That's not true at all for me. I have kind of specific tastes, but there are some places that it wanders. Film scores and soundtracks are a big part of what I listen to. The Beatles are big. I like a lot of folk stuff, like Simon and Garfunkel. There's a band that I was really into that were only a couple of years old, and then they announced they were splitting up at the beginning of this year. They were called The Bygones. It was made up of two artists that I kind of followed separately, and then they united to be a band. Allison Young and Joshua Lee Turner. I was more familiar with Josh Turner's stuff than I was with Allison's, but I enjoyed seeing what she was putting out. And then when they came together, absolutely loved it. I actually got to see them live in Ann Arbor. Originally, I bought tickets for Julia and I, and then something came up where one of our dogs was sick, and so she stayed home. I went and I called Jeremy, who was living in the Ann Arbor area, and said, do you want to join me? And he really enjoyed it. And then they said at the thing, like, this is we've never been to Ann Arbor. This is a great town. We'd love to come back. I think this will be on our stop next time. And I said to Julia, like, next time you have to go. And then I want to say it was like a month after that they announced that they were breaking up. So that's a bummer. I like, again, folksy stuff. Nick Drake. Some of the more operatic, like Disney stuff, like Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Hunchback of Notre Dame is still my favorite of all the Disney soundtracks. Just pound for pound soundtrack on its own. I think it's amazing. Soundtrack / score. In that same vein, Phantom of the Opera is one that I go to. Cake is a band that I was introduced to in the 90s and still pops up. In fact, I'm going to be getting to see Cake later this summer. A friend of mine is getting tickets for us. Towery, have a good night. The Rooster and Gnome. That piece was available as a print through Society 6, but Society 6 changed their policy about what they, who they will allow to sell stuff there, and I didn't make their cut, so all that stuff is now not available for being prints unless I make prints and sell them through my store, and I just haven't done that yet because I'm focused on lots and lots and lots of other stuff. Hunchback is so good. I completely agree. Complete animation. It's something Chris Schweitzer and I both have very big opinions about. Heavy metal stuff is just not my. It's not my taste. It's not the stuff I go to. I also really like 60s, 70s. Singer-songwriter, even some 50s kind of doo-woppy stuff, more just because I kind of grew up on it. My dad graduated in the 50s, so we had a lot of kind of sock hop music being played, and then I listened to the oldie station throughout high school, mostly because I was a big Beatles fan, and so that was the station where you had, the only chance of hearing a Beatles song. And then, of course, I got introduced to all kinds of others, artists of that era. From, stuff like the Big Bopper all the way through, Herman's Hermits and other British Invaders. And all them folks. And I enjoy that. I don't think I have any of it, though, other than Beatles music. I don't think I have anything I can listen to of that kind of 50s. Music you'd hear at a classic car show. Do I listen to vinyl, CDs, or just digital? I have CDs, but I don't pull them out anymore. I mean, I used to long ago. I just have all of my CDs digitized, and that's what I'm listening to. I don't do the streaming stuff. I'm not Spotify or any of those. I listen to music for the most part that I own. I've done a little bit of digital downloading for some newer stuff where it's just that's the most convenient way of getting it. I had contemplated at the merch table for the Bygones when they were in Ann Arbor getting a CD and or getting a vinyl. My brother-in-law is a big vinyl guy, and I know he just likes having vinyl. He just likes. So I didn't know if he would even care for their music. But I just thought, well, maybe I should get him a vinyl. And then I was like, nah, I don't want to get him something and make him feel weird that now he has to like it or whatever. So I nixed that and just... I did get a CD. I got a CD. I did get a CD. I haven't listened to it because I already had all the music digitally. Okay, one thing I am not as good at and out of practice now that I've not been streaming for a while is keeping up with the chat and working at the same time. Am I a fan of samurai movies at all? Nothing against them. I haven't seen very many. I've seen a few. One of the problems with like being introduced to movies or TV shows or things like that, where I know people recommend stuff, is unless you're enjoying it with someone, sometimes it's hard to get into something new. Either because like the TV is in a public room, and then if it's like Julia goes, I wasn't planning on watching hard sci-fi, or I wasn't planning on watching a samurai movie. You have to wait until a moment where it's like, oh, okay, she's we're not together at this moment, she's upstairs doing something, or she's in the basement working on something or whatever, and then I'm gonna watch the thing I'm gonna watch where it's totally okay that, and it's not like she won't let me, it's just when we're together we should be watching stuff that we both enjoy. And with something like samurai movies, I feel like that's the kind of thing where like you want to, especially if you're new to it, you want to like talk about like, oh, this part was cool, I really like how the director did this or that. And so unless you've got somebody who's kind of either already into it, who can even help talk you through that, like, did you like how the director did this? Or if you like that moment, you should see their other movie, blah, blah, blah. Or that you're both discovering it together at the same time. And yeah, samurai movies, at least to my knowledge, isn't the kind of thing that Julia's like, hey, when are we going to watch more samurai movies? So without somebody to kind of guide me through what's really good, and then have that exploring fun thing of like talking about it, I don't know, I'd like to watch more samurai movies. I know Kurosawa is super influential to a lot of folks, so getting to explore that more and really understand, I think, would be great. Makes you sad about the prince. Yep. Yeah, I think the way that worked was it was a print-on-demand service where they were printing stuff at Society 6, and then when enough things had sold, I would get a check. And I think they just decided, we're going to charge for the service of having an online store open for you. And we're going to try to like limit the amount of paperwork and the amount of like weird one-offs we're doing. We're going to almost jury who gets to be a regular part of our business model, and which I also assume had to do more with sales than it had to do with like looking at the art. And I'm not saying that like, because if you look at my art, there's no way they could have rejected me. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like, my guess is they weren't taking the time to like jury the artwork. They were just going, whose stuff is already selling that we can't afford to lose? Who are our top sellers? And then they just had some number cut off, and they went, everything below that's a no, unless they reach out to, like, appeal. And I just, it's like, why am I going to appeal? If you don't want me, you don't want me. And I just went, I'll just, maybe I'll release those. In fact, I have a list over here. I have a handwritten list of the pieces that were up on Society 6 that I know would be saleable if I made them available through my online store, for Julia and I to look into, like formatting them to be printed and then having prints made and having them available. And it's just one of those like in a long list of, hey, some night when there's free time, that's something that should be done. So I think you can kind of see why it's nice to have so many paintings going at once. Normally I would get one so wet that I have to set it off to the side because I can't do any more to it for quite a while. I think the fact that I'm kind of juggling 5 paintings right now, and that this mat board is drying weirdly, where like I can work on it longer because of that, is throwing some of the process stuff. A personal favorite character in the Mouse Guard universe. I mean, they're all my the quick answer is they're all my babies. How could I pick a favorite? The more realistic answer is Saxon is based on some of my worst personality traits. So I have a soft spot for him because his problems are my problems. But truth be told, the character that I just keep coming back to, even when I think I'm done with them, is Kellenaw. He was supposed to just be this kind of myth figure that would recede back into myth, and in having to explain some of the cool stuff about the myth, ended up setting myself up where now so much of the narrative is tied up in that lore. Doesn't mean that I can't do stuff with the other characters. I totally can, but then, cool ideas come up with the lore or how that affects that character in particular. So Kellenaw is one that I can't seem to get away from. Not that I want to, but you know what I mean. How are Coco and Bronwyn? They're doing okay. I mean, they're getting older. Bronwyn had a really severe malady around the time of COVID. She had meningitis, and it messed with her and her neurology to some degree, but then also the level of medicine that was prescribed to her. Like, couple different vets. One of the vets is like, "Oh, this is gonna sound crazy, but the only way we can combat this," because one of them had prescribed a medicine, and then the other vet's like, "That's the right medicine, but to treat how sick this dog is, we are gonna have to give them like astronomical, unrecommended levels of that med." And it was like, if you usually get 20 units per week, he's like, they need 600 per week. I've seen it a couple times before. This is the way you treat this kind of rare condition and level of that condition. And so Bronwyn went on that. It saved her life. But it did a lot of damage. It's the kind of thing that destroys and starts breaking down some of your tendons. And so she has some issues with her feet and legs that have come about because of that. So she has physical therapy regularly, goes on the little doggy treadmill just to kind of keep her moving under very controlled circumstances. I mean, she still walks. She goes out in the yard and stuff like that, but she needs kind of regular therapy, and then they also will do essentially like doggy chiropractic. And I know that sounds crazy, but like, because of her stuff, we don't really do walks very much. But she like if she was up here and I said the word walk, she'd already be jumping up and running to the to the door, like, we're going for walks. What? And the other day I was like, I'm gonna take you. It was late at night, because that's another thing. Both dogs are huge barkers, and so when it's dog walk o'clock for everyone else, I cannot take the dogs out because they just spend the whole time just barking at other dogs. And so I took them out. I took each one separately, very late. I knew also it was late and they would be tired. And so I didn't do full walks around the block, just did part ways. And with Bronwyn, when I got to the, like, you know, what I felt was a good halfway point and then tried to turn around, she was like, I refuse. That's the way back home, and I don't want to go home. I want to keep going. And I was just thinking, like, because it wasn't even halfway, but it was like, it's going to be too long of a walk if we go the other way. It's going to be too hard on her. She's not going to be able to finish. She's going to be limping. And then I'm fighting her, trying to bring her back. You know, a little bit of pulling on the we have a harness, so it's not just all pulling on her neck, but, you know, pulling on the harness, pulling her, and she just wouldn't come because she wanted to be stubborn. She wanted to go for a longer walk, and I'm just like, I can't get you home. I can't even, like, ask someone to help. There's nobody out here. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll cross her to the other side of the street. And that way, at least all the smells are new. We're going the same route home, but we're doing it on the other side of the street. So at least all the smells she's going to get to smell are different, and she'll feel better. And we started doing that, and one of our neighbors has, they do a very elaborate Halloween display with skeletons and ghouls and things hanging from trees like ghosts, and I mean, it's they do lights and fog. It's a really elaborate. And I mean this like in a tasteful way, it's also not in like a super store-bought way. It's not like you just look and go, oh, that's the Home Depot trend, and that's the Home Depot trend from 2 years ago. It's stuff that they come up with. But they have some fake skeletons, some fake plastic skeletons at human scale, and they have probably like 7 or 8 of them, and they set them up in the yard doing all kinds of different things, have cool lights projected up on them. You know, sitting there like they're drinking or playing checkers or cutting down the tree. Well, they leave one of those up all year, and it's a skeleton riding a bicycle. And it's kind of propped up by their back door. Well, when we cross the street, we're over by that house near its back door. And when Bronwyn gets like this, when she sees something that's humanoid, she barks like there's an intruder. And we had this problem once at my dad's at a Christmas. We were visiting my dad for Christmas, and he and his wife had a replica of just the kind of neck and head of the statue of David, and it was up high on a book. It was larger than life size, and it was up on the top shelf of a bookshelf in the living room. And she just cowered at the entry of that whole room. It was at the other end, and she just bark, bark, bark. And she'd come like a step forward with her head cowered, bark, bark. And it just got to be that every time we'd go over there, we'd come in, and I'd go and I'd get the statue down, and I'd put it behind one of the chairs so that, like, in the corner where she's not going to see it. And it meant no barking. Well, she's barking at this skeleton on a bike, and there's nothing I can do. I can't go take down their skeleton. And it's like 3 a.m. Like I said, it was late when I decided to take them for a walk. And now she's barking in a way that's going to start waking everybody up. So I'm trying to pull on her, like, no, back to the other side of the street. No barking. Come on, it's okay. And then I start hearing the dogs inside that house barking. So it is going to wake everybody up. So I'm tugging on her, trying to get her back across to our side of the street. And by the time we get her back to our side of the street, I'm pretty much having to pick her up by the harness and walk her about as far as I can carry her. She's a 120-pound dog, big dog. Just try to get her back, and then she'd stop and drag her feet, and I'd be like, come on. And she'd walk a couple steps, but real slow. By the time we got home, she was limping, and I told Julia the whole story and everything, but she's been kind of like just not physically as good as normal. And so when she went to PT, physical therapy, it was just yesterday. No, 2 days ago. I said to Julia, like, I don't think she's going to do well at PT today. Like, I have a feeling she's not going to do well on the treadmill. I have a feeling they're going to even say she's considerably worse. You know, something's happened ever since the walk. And Julia's like, yeah, I agree. but we'll go. We'll see what they have to say. She'll, hopefully she'll just do her best. We'll go from there. And they got her, and they went, yeah, something's definitely off. Let's do a little chiropractic adjustment. Yep, there's a little bit wrong right here in the spine. And then, she has a rib popped out. Like, completely out of space. And she was like, she felt along the side and felt like one was, and she just goes, here. Boop! And as she's doing it, Bronwyn's like kind of crying and kind of cowering. And then as soon as that goes in, she jumps up, wags her tail, and starts hopping around the room like, are we going to go do fun things now? And it was right kind of where the harness attaches. And Julia was like, I think my husband did that when he was trying to get her home and explain the situation. And they're like, of course, that's a totally that's a good explanation. And your husband didn't do anything wrong. Like, you're trying to get your dog home for safety and to not be a bad neighbor. But yeah. That's a whole lot of stuff going on. So she's doing better now that she's had that adjustment. She feels better. Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah. Let's see. And how's Coco? Yeah, Coco's doing okay. I mean, Coco's had her own health stuff. She had a surgery a little while ago for a growth. Apparently it's totally it's a very normal, regular kind of thing. Julia and I were very nervous because she's an Anatolian Shepherd, and Anatolian Shepherds don't tend to do great with surgeries, and especially with anesthesia. And she's old. They're both older. They're both above 10 years old. So you just start wondering, is this surgery, even though we're, going to try to do the right thing, is this surgery the end? Is this it? So we were both pretty worked up while she was in surgery. They told us to wait. Don't wait in the building, but they were like, don't drive all the way home. Because we live about 40 minutes away from our regular vet. That's how good the vet is. We keep going back there. They were like, yeah, don't drive all the way home. Also, because of Coco's stuff with anesthesia, they're like, we want you to basically be the ones to wake her up in the recovery room after enough time has passed that it's suitable for her to wake up. So, you're going to be her first person she sees. That'll hopefully make everything else go smoother, too. Which it all did. Totally the right call. But anyhow, yeah. But Coco's doing good otherwise. Let me... I also realized I gotta go pretty soon. I've got art night in 40 minutes. And I gotta eat something too. Do I know or like Warhammer 40K? My friends played a lot of Warhammer 40K. The thing I didn't like about Warhammer 40K was the collectability. I didn't have money when I was that age to spend on collectible stuff. I liked games where I save up and I buy it, and then it was also a reason that I didn't get into Magic for a really long time. I want to save up the money to buy the thing, and then I buy it, and then we play it. The whole, somebody could come in a week from now with new stuff and a different way of beating me that now I have to keep up with. I have to go buy new miniatures. I have to go buy new stuff so that I can keep playing the game I already bought. Was just I'm not down for that. But I had friends who played. I did and I totally played two Warhammer-y things. One was Space Hulk. Loved Space Hulk because Space Hulk was, for the most part, a done-in-one. You bought the game. Now you could play it. Or a couple add-on things, but you didn't... There was no need to buy it. Everything was in the one box. So that, and then Warhammer Quest, which was a fantasy thing that they did that was kind of like the Hero Quest game but all with Warhammer theme. We played a great deal of that, which I know you could also add on to. I think we added a couple of the base, like, archetype characters, instead of just the 4, wizard. It was like wizard, elf, dwarf, and fighter or something like that. We added a witch hunter. And what was the other thing? We added another miniature. That was an add-on. Now I can't remember what it was. Anyhow, we bought that and then some extra cards with like more items. But yeah, we played the hell out of that. But I never really got into the 40K game. Although, like I said, I had friends who did, and I played once or twice with their stuff. And I got really into painting at one point. I was like my freshman year, maybe sophomore. Maybe it was the summer between freshman and sophomore year of college. Painting all of my, maybe it was even later than that. Anyways, all of my Warhammer Quest miniatures. I think I had a plan that summer I was going to run this massive Warhammer Quest campaign where I had made up I had made up the campaign. Like, I had used their map tiles but designed my own puzzles and traps, how many monsters would appear, etc. Even some like twists. And I thought, like, I want all the miniatures painted, and I started painting them all. I still have that in the closet. It hasn't been plucked out in a long time. Make sure that's all the places that need to be brown. Right there. Okay. And while we're at it, we'll start doing a little bit of laying in some darker values. I always forget how long these paintings are going to take because of how much building needs to happen with all the color. And everything's relative. Like, when you put that first down, you're like, oh, that went too dark. And then it dries, and you're like, oh, I need to do so much more. Like, there was some stuff that I was doing on that hand when it was all still very wet, but I was like, oh boy, I've really, like, I've already laid in almost like probably what are the final shadows on that hand. I can't go much darker. And by the time it dried, it was like you could barely see what I had done. So it just takes time. I know there are more questions. Let me get to them. What are my favorite dog breeds? I like big dogs. I like good sized big dogs. We've had Anatolians. We've had a Newfoundland. I don't know that I'd ever want to own a Newfoundland again, and it really honestly is just the hair. I think in a different world where we had land, I would love a husky or a malamute, but I also know how much they need in terms of exercise and room to be, and then they're also big howlers. One of the things I like about big dogs is they don't feel like they have anything to prove. I feel like little dogs, you know how cats can just kind of like, you put your hand down to pet them and then they do that like, I'm going to bat you and grab your hands with my front claws and then bite. And it, like, obviously there are times where you can do something like that to a cat and you're like, oh, I had it coming. Like, that was a threatening gesture in that moment or whatever. But other times it just feels like it comes out of just nowhere. The cat just decided, hey, I'm going to attack your hand and be a real jerk. I feel like little dogs have some of that because they have something to prove. They're so little, they have to kind of be in this defense mode so much of the time. So I tend not to be a little dog fan, but I've met lots of little dogs that I love. How is Julia? Does she help out with the business? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Julia does so much with the business side of Mouse Guard. I'm, I get to weigh in and make decisions and stuff, but for the most part, yeah, like all the convention paperwork and logistics, dealing with Boom when it comes to like things getting reprinted or ordering stock for conventions or just any of that stuff. Any of the like, this has to get done. Let's talk to convention organizer, publisher, air travel, hotel. She does all the shipping and receiving. So you order anything from our online store, Julia's the one hand packing that. Every now and then we'll have some help with a family member or even me, but that's usually only around like Christmas time where we have so many orders that Julia needs some relief. And she's still doing it. It's just we're also doing maybe a third of what she's doing. But otherwise, it's all her. Thank you, Fazoli. Irish Wolfhound. Yeah, I had a boss who had Irish Wolfhounds for a long time, and then they swore they would never have them again because of the short lifespan. And it was just too emotionally difficult to have to say goodbye so quickly. And then after they swore that, it was like maybe 2 years, and they got another Irish Wolfhound. They loved the breed. They just couldn't resist when one came available. Which I can totally appreciate. Julia and I have said no more Anatolians. And it's just the size and stuff like getting them in and out of the car. Also, they're a very particular breed that not all of them are really destined to be house animals. And we've been very lucky that all of ours have adapted pretty well. Our first Anatolian and Coco, our first Anatolian was Autumn. Both Autumn and Coco are so much more attached to humans than they are to anything outdoors. And Bronwyn will lay outside and ignore me when I call her to come in. She will we have an outdoor bed for her out there. It's like a little elevated hammocky thing, kind of like a stretched cot. She'll lay in that and just turn her head away. Like, I just want to be out here. She loves stalking animals, especially at night. She wants to go out there. It's like her, built-in job. to be, protector, to make sure that critters aren't coming in and that she's killing them. And she's killed a lot of things where, we try to limit her time outside so that she's not just killing stuff, but she's killed raccoons and possums and birds. And we don't like that. We don't want to kill off the wildlife, but and Bronwyn's still a good inside the house dog, but I've heard of other people who were like, yeah, we had an Anatolian and it just wanted to be outside so much it just would break through the window to go outside. Yeah, retrievers can be great too. Do I have a favorite board game? I don't think I have a favorite. I like Catan. There's a D&D based board game called Wrath of a Chardalon that I really like. I made a board game that I like called Tower. That's just something for friends and I. We've never released it. I really like Swords and Strongholds, the mouse guard board game that's out of print. It's the game that the mice play in the books. What else do I really like that's a board game? Wrath of a Chardalon. Oh, there was a release of a version of Stratego called Stratego Legends that I really liked, and I played intensely for about 2 months in kind of a perfect storm where I had a friend who lived in the apartment below me and we both liked fantasy board games, and so we would play that when we were home from work, and then things changed where we weren't in those living conditions anymore, and then we didn't really get to play that anymore. And it's still in my game closet. Every now and then when Julia and I do a purge, and I bought 2, it was like right when the game was going out of print too, and I bought 2 sets so that there was plenty that we could do like a draft, because there were it was supposed to be collectible, like where you could get different tiles that had different abilities. And my friend Seth and I, we would do like a draft at the beginning of when we'd start playing so that the game was different every time. We also came up with rules for playing 4 players at once across those 2 sets. And every now and then it comes up where it's like, hey, do you still need this? And it's like, well, I don't know when I'm ever going to play with somebody, but man, I had a blast playing it when I did. And I'd love to play it some more, but I can't give you any indication. So we just keep hanging on to it with the idea that someday will be the right time to play that game again. Yes, I'm glad you were able to get a copy of Swords and Strongholds as well. It's, like we've said, not easy to get anymore. It's out of print. It's something I would love to get back in print, but it's not as easy as just saying, let's do that. Alright, I think I'm going to get the blue down here, and then I'm going to have to stop for the night. Or at least stop streaming. Like I said, I have a kind of virtual appointment I need to get to. I also need to grab something to eat real quick. Probably just inhale some food. My appointment's technically at 7. I can be a little late for it, but I should be I should be as close to 7 as possible. Sorry if I'm out of frame here. By the way, I think long term, getting Swords and Strongholds back in print is going to be doable. It's just, like I said, it's not an easy thing of pushing a button. There's right stuff about getting Luke and I on the same page about how we want to proceed with who's actually like manufacturing it and doing the bookkeeping and warehousing it, etc., in a way that works for everybody involved. And then there's the issue of right now, ain't nobody doing board games really because of the tariffs. I was telling a friend, because it came up at the Mouse Guard panel at Motor City, and afterwards I went out to dinner with some friends, and they had a little bit more insight about some of the stuff I was talking about, and we were talking about that kind of everything going on with the tabletop industry right now. And I was like, look, I have lots of friends who make all kinds of tabletop stuff. Some of them make like just custom dice. Some of them make, you know, full-on games with cards. Some of them make games that are just paper RPGs, etc. But I'm like, anybody who has any kind of a board or card, anything that they need to print in mass or box up. Like there needs to be a box for it where everything fits in. Like all of them are basically saying, I'm done for right now. Some of them are like, I'm done for right now. Some of them are like, my business is going out of business. And I said, what it really boils down to is even if the tariffs are up and then down and then nope, now that's not a thing. They're canceled. Nope, now they're back. I'm like, nobody can run a business that way. Nobody can run a business knowing that tomorrow everything could change again. Like it's just too unstable to expect someone to consistently do business. So for right now, it's not a good time for that, which makes all the rest of that stuff more complicated. Coco has opinions. By the way, if you are looking to... let's see. One, I should probably promote Patreon again. A lot of stuff happening over on Patreon. Stuff that's free. Stuff that is... different levels of subscription. But I try to make sure that I have something at every tier level that's interesting and worth it for folks. So please take a look at that. We have new issues of Dawn of the Black, or a new issue of Dawn of the Black Axe coming out in June. It's the last issue of the series, and hardcover coming out next year. And I will be at Heroes Con in June and San Diego Comic Convention in July. And some of this artwork is going to be made available at Heroes in auctions and at my table. But there's a lot more painting I have to do before that happens. I mean, a lot more. This is way more time consuming than I assumed, or than I remembered. So I think with that, we're going to sign off. Thanks everybody for hanging out. I will try to do I will try to do more of these. I can't guarantee that I'm going to do more of these, but I'm going to try to do more of these kind of things here on where am I? I'm on YouTube. YouTube. Yeah, thanks everybody. Let's see, I'll go full screen. Move that out of the way. We can I can hold stuff up and kind of show you where we are. This is the one we started on. There's stuff going on, but there's a lot more. This is kind of where we're going. There's a very dark background. There's a lot of details. There's colors that need to come in more intensely. So there's that one. There's this one that we've done almost nothing to. There's this one that has some promise, but there's some stuff going on in the sword hilt that I'm happy with. There's a little bit of stuff on the fur, some stuff on the sword that's not bad, but it needs a lot more work, a lot more attention. And then really the two big paintings that I need to be working on are this tailspin piece and this Rescue Rangers piece, both of which are going to Heroes. One for the auction, one for my table. So, thank you guys for hanging out. We'll do this again, hopefully sometime. Have a great rest of your night. Thanks, everybody.